Hey everybody, so I am here today. I'm kind of finishing up my crow journal. I know I just recently posted a getting started on it journal video, but anyways, it is what it is. Here we are. I've been busy. I've been working on it. What am I thinking? So I have this journal has 4 signatures. It's a 1.5-inch spine. I am ready to sew in my signatures. So I thought I would be nice and jump on here and sew on my signatures with you guys. Now, the disclaimer is this is the part of journal making that I am not a fan of. I'm just not a fan of it. So, mainly because it involves math and figuring and measuring and things like that I'm not a fan of. I'm very much a willy-nilly when it comes to that, and so I don't like to measure and figure and 1/8 and 1/4, and I don't like to do that. So if you don't do that, then this kind of presents a challenge. You know, sewing these journals in and getting them lined up and all that presents a bit of a challenge. So, which is why I struggle with it. But I thought I would jump on here and do this with you guys so you could see. My friend Mary Ellen and I, we've been back and forth commenting on each other's pages because she just recently finished up a journal and she did a video where she sewed in her signatures, and I applauded her for that because it's such a struggle to me that it's not something I've done on camera yet. And so, but we talked about the fact that both of our channels are very much a whatever goes goes. We're very non-editing. We're very much just kind of go with the flow, and if we mess up, we mess up. We just fix it and go with it. And so, yeah. So with that, I just kind of was encouraged to, and since I'm at that point of sewing in these signatures, that I thought I would maybe jump on here and kind of show you guys how I do it, so you can see me mess up, because I can guarantee you I'm going to. So, here we have our journal inside cover. I've cut a piece of paper for my template that fits. It doesn't fit exactly like I want it to, because usually I don't like it to crease when the pages fold, but I've got a lot of material up in here and I've got this going through, so I'm just gonna kind of work with it. So we have 1.5-inch spine. We have our template that fits, and I lined it up. It's kind of important that you line it up top and bottom. Make sure it like exactly fits, because if it doesn't, if it's a little off, then your pages are going to be off, and you're going to have like a big gap up here or a big gap down here. So it's kind of important that you make sure your template is the exact size of your spine. That is a learning lesson for me, because the first 1 or 2 that I did, that did not happen. So here's my template, or template, however you say it. And I'm just going to kind of go through what I do. I have 4 signatures, so I'm going to need my 4 lines. I'm lining this up on my mat, kind of getting it eyeballed even, and I'm going to tape it down. I'm going to utilize my mat, the measurements on my mat, to help me kind of pinpoint my holes. I do a 3-hole stitch. It's pretty common. I've done a 5-hole before, but the 3-hole tends to work better for me. So I've kind of got this. I think you guys can see it. I've kind of got this lined up to where this is centered. But I don't want a center line because I've got 4, so I need 2 on this side and 2 on this side. And I'm going to kind of go with these dots here on my mat and these dots here on my mat. So I am lining myself up here, and this may be more steps than some people do. This is just what tends to work for me. Again, this is not my favorite part of journal making. So, but this is the best way that I've figured out how to do it to make sure we line up the best way possible. Of course, nothing's 100%, and that's kind of why I like junk journaling, because it's like there's really no rules when you get down to it. There's no rules. So I have my 4 lines for my signatures. There is a bit of a big space here in the middle, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that, mainly because that's the easiest way for me to figure out where my lines need to go. So now I've got to decide where my center line is. Now, sometimes I line this up with my blocks and tape it down, but I didn't today. I lined it up for my center point, but I didn't line up this area, mainly because this piece of this template's not exactly 1.5 inch wide. Again, I trimmed it down because of the bulk in my spine. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball where my center is. I'm not going to go by the mat because, as you can see, I think I'm not lined up down here or up here. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball where my center line is. We're going to call that the center. And then I like to go about 1 inch from the bottom. And since, again, my lines are not lined up, I'm going to kind of just use my ruler. Give me 1 inch from the bottom and 1 inch from the top. So I have my 3 sections where my holes are going to go. I've got my 4 lines where my signatures are, and I just kind of give me a point of where I'm poking holes. Now, for this part and to poke through my spine, because sometimes I make my spines kind of thick just for reinforcements, I use my Big Bite to make sure it goes all the way through. So now that we got our template, we want to make sure we're lined up. Sometimes I leave my tape going, sometimes I don't. I think I'm gonna give me another piece to work with, just for some extra security, because if this shifts, then your holes are shifted. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm using washi tape. Well, that was weird. Things just kind of fell off my table, my side table, with nothing. I mean, I got my fan on, but it's on the floor. That's weird. Anyways, I'm using washi tape, so it shouldn't pull off the paper, my inside cover paper. I'm not 100% pleased with this. It's not laying down really flat, mainly because I've got this bulk here. But we're just going to kind of go with it. See, my washi's already popped off. And I am just kind of lining up where I marked those holes. Oh, I'm off here. And some people are very willy-nilly with this part, but I feel like it's important that your holes line up. I mean, in the big scheme of things, especially if you have a hidden spine, it doesn't really matter. But if your spine's gonna be exposed and your threads and all that are gonna be exposed, it's kind you know, for aesthetics, it's kind of nice to have them lined up. So I try to do this. If any of you guys don't have this tool, I highly recommend it. Mainly because it's pretty strong, and again, I like to do my spines kind of thick sometimes, and so it pokes right through my paper, my fabric, all that good stuff. I have the little guy, the little bite. I think he's a big bite, but he's little, but he don't reach the center. So that's why we had to invest in this guy, and it has been worth the money spent. I will say that. And I'm not a big spender when it comes to things like that. I prefer to thrift. I prefer to buy used. I don't like to spend a lot of money on myself, so that was a treat, though. So we have our holes punched, and we still have our template. So our holes look pretty okay. I'm kind of wonky on this one down here, but that's okay. We're gonna go with it. Looks pretty good so far. So now we have to make holes in our signature. Now I usually start, when about the signatures, I usually start the last one and work my way up to the front. I don't know that there's any science behind this. That's just the way I was taught and the way I've done it ever since. So let me get my needle out here. So yeah, it's just the way I was taught to work from the back to the front, and I'm kind of set in my ways with that. So set you aside and my needle aside. I need to mark my holes. Now, I can use my big bite on my signatures, but I don't normally, because if you know, you know. When you open up and pinch down or poke holes, this doesn't always line up with this, if that makes any sense, because of the fold in the paper and all that. So I typically hand poke my signature pages, and you know, and use the machine on my spine. So so anyways, that's what we're gonna do. I am gonna make sure I've got my 4 signatures here. My template goes from top to bottom of the book. I hope I'm not going so too fast. I'm not used to tutorials, so you're just gonna have to work with me. Good thing there's a pause. Yeah, my template goes top to bottom in my book, and I want to make sure I poke my holes accordingly, so I'm, again, not way up here or way down here. So kind of tap them in, make them fit, make them look good, top and bottom. I kind of want an even amount. So my signatures are pretty, which is surprisingly, pretty well placed. Usually they're off quite a bit, because again, I don't measure. So, also, I don't know if you noticed, I labeled the top of my template, the top. You guys, the first time I did this, I was like, why do we have to label the top? We're doing 2 in, but it makes a difference. Surprisingly, it makes a difference. So I'm kind of lining this up. It's a little longer than my pages, but that's okay, because this is my template, remember, is the length of the book. So I'm making a little dot here where my holes should line up. I'm on the inside signature of my last set of signatures, the inside page of my last set of signatures. I've made a dot with my template. All my pages are where I want them to be. I think, let me scoot you up. Scoot, scoot, scoot. It's important to get all your pages where you want them. Make sure they're nice and tucked in, because again, when you poke these holes, and actually, before I do that, usually I work with much thicker signatures. I'm kind of trying something different right now, to not be so bulky in my journals. I was hoping for my little clips, but oh, there they are at the bottom. I'm trying not to be so bulky in my journals. I want them to just fit perfectly. That's funny, huh? Just fit perfectly. Just do that. That's all we need. That's all we need. So usually I have very thick signatures to work with. These are not so thick, and I am loving that. Oh, sorry to be so noisy. I'm trying to get my little clips out. But they have fallen to the bottom. Okay. Once I make sure my signatures are good to go and where they need to be, I clip them both on both sides, just so we don't have no shifting or minimal shifting. I've got my dots placed, and when I poke my signatures, I kind of fold and poke. Make sure I got a good hole going on there. Hope you guys can see this. A lot of dark colors going on here. But I tend to fold and poke, and that seems to work for me. Now, so I have my holes in this signature, and what I'm going to do is line this up with the rest of my signatures. It's kind of, I have a template, but it's kind of like my last signature became my template now. I'm working with my next signature, getting us all clipped together and where we need to be. And so kind of lining it up. And I do this because I want all my signatures to line up. And I would rather have all my signatures lining up and have a gap at the top or the bottom than to have my signatures be not lined up, if that makes any sense. So I do it like this so my signatures will line up. Folding and poking through. And then I kind of check to make sure my holes lined up. Good deal. Moving on to the next signature. Make sure all my pages are where I need them to be. They're kind of sticking together. And where are you, center page? You're right here. There's no specific place that I clip these. Sometimes I do them on the side, sometimes I do them, you know, up top. Now I'm gonna go with the last signature. Again, trying to keep them all lined up. Using where I poke the holes, which they also match the first signature that I did. And I'm folding and poking. Folding and poking. And folding and poking. Okay. So now I have 3 signatures done, and I'm kind of just making sure my holes are lined up, and they are. So moving on to the last signature, which is technically the first signature. Making sure my pages are where they need to be. Find my center. Clip me tight. And then taking my last signature and kind of lining us up. So essentially my template only is used to get me started. from there, I use my other pages because, again, that seems to work best for me to help line me up. And folding and poking. Folding and poking. Folding and poking. Okay, so we have all 4 signatures. You notice I'm still clipped because I'll stay clipped until I'm sewed in. And all my lines are pretty lined up. Make sure I'm upright. Yep, okay. So, now we get to sew in our signatures. Yay! I'm done with my template. It'll go in the trash for us to not confuse me in the future. I'm using some embroidery thread, and I tend to do 3 times the length of my signature. It gives me a good amount. So 1, 2, 3, 2. I like to cut my thread so I don't get I feel like that was 4 maybe. Oh well. We'll work with it. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think that was 4, but that's okay. We'll work with it. Okay. So now we have 4 little piles again. I'm going back to my back signature. Last signature. And my thread. Get to my needle. I tend to use some, is it jute or embroidery thread to sew in my signatures, a thicker thread basically. And so we're just gonna do the typical 3-hole stitch. I'm not doing anything special with this spine as far as beads or anything like that. I'm kind of keeping this one pretty simple. Don't ask why, I just am. I say that. I was playing around with the thought of having let's see here. Okay, yeah, we're gonna back up and regroup because I have an idea. So back up and regroup. Instead of unthreading my needle, I'm just gonna unthread my book. So my idea is to, the pages have this black lace trim. So I want some of that black lace kind of ruffled here. I'm not gonna glue it down, I'm just gonna kind of sew it in and hope that it works. If that makes any sense. We'll try it, see what happens. It may be more of a headache than I'm willing to deal with. It's not going to be anything fancy or special. Probably shouldn't be doing this on a tutorial, but again, you'll get to see like what it's all about. Maybe if I clipped them. No, I think that's going to get in my way if I do that. I'm just going to have to line it up and make it work and struggle with it a little bit. It's just what we're going to do. And if it don't work out, then we'll back up and regroup. All about experimenting, seeing what'll happen. I don't know. I don't know about this idea. Almost lost my inner tail. Okay. Is this gonna work how I want it to, how I envision it? The important part right here, coming through the center, is to not thread your other, not to pierce through your other thread, because you won't get a good tight tie if that's the case. And that's what I've done. So here's how to fix it. See what I've done? I've poked through and split my thread. But what we're gonna do is pull this back through. We can figure out how. Okay. Now we're not split anymore. You want one thread on on each side of your inside. I'm pulling it tight. And supposedly there's a trick to, supposed to tie it one time this way, one time that way, and one time another way, but my brain doesn't function that way as far as how the thread is. So we don't really care about that. Now, let's see what we got going on with this lace back here and see if this is gonna work how I envision it. It's kind of grungy, but I mean, it's not even, you know what I'm saying? I'm okay with that. Because, again, this point is kind of just to do some grungy lace. We'll see. Okay, so we're sewed in. We'll deal with the spine and the lace later. Again, I may trim it all off, who knows. Our back signature, our last signature, is sewed in. Good deal. We are all lined up like we want to be. So we're going to the next signature. Get our thread and our needle. And practice some patience. And voila, we are threaded. Go into our next to the last signature, in through the middle, and get us a strip of lace going on here. See what becomes of that. Again, I'm not trying to do anything special with this. I'm just kind of lacing it, sewing it in my inner with my my signature threads. I'm not trying to make it even or anything like that. I want it to be kind of grungy and ruffly, and who cares if it's wonky. Don't lose my tail. Come in through my lace. Don't lose your tail shell. And back through my lace. got lace in the way now. Can't see. Try not to thread through your other lace or your other string per se. Come up on the other side. Pull you all the way through. We did not split our thread. That is great. Get a good tight tie. Again, I don't know the whole go up one side and tie up this way and then tie up this way. I don't know that. I'll just tie it. Signature is in. Our lace is kind of weird and grungy, and that's okay. And then, let's see here. Let's go with our third. Thread our needle. Woo! I keep splitting my thread. There we go. And our next signature. In through the middle. Grab some funky lace. Make sure I'm not losing my tail. Of course, if you're, I'm adding this lace here, so I'm able to cover up my holes that may be a little wonky. So that's one thing to think of. If you have, if your holes don't line up exactly, or, if you don't really like the way all your holes look, and that's one way to always add something to your spine to kind of cover that up. And give me some lace to grunge through. And you poke through the, I don't want you to do that. You need to flip around. Well, okay. I guess that's gonna work. Come through the middle, try not to split our thread. Don't think we did. We did not. Good deal. Although we have a short tail, that's for sure. That's okay, I just need enough to tie. Okay, third signature's in. Our lace is kind of frumpy. And last but not least, I think this is our thread that we have. I did 4 links, so this is going to be a little long, but we'll trim him off. And our last signature, in we go. And our last strip of lace. Although, I will say this, sewing in your signatures, while it's not my favorite thing to do, it is quite meditative, whatever that word is. Because there is some concentration, and there is some quiet, and so that is nice. This piece of lace is a little longer than the rest, but we will trim. We will trim. Find a hole here. Come on. Don't split our thread. And I'm gonna probably jinx myself, but so far this signature sewing in has not been a big deal. I have not had any major mishaps, which is shocking and surprising and all that good stuff, because again, usually it takes me a while. So usually I work on a journal, get all my pages ready, get all my ephemera in, get it all good to go except for the sewing in, and then I typically let it sit for a little while. I step away from it because sewing in the signatures is not my favorite thing to do. And so I tend to let it sit and I marinate on it for a little bit. Because again, I don't particularly care to do that. So let's see here. What do we have? We're kind of loose, but that's okay. We're okay. We're okay. Just trim our tails a little bit so they're not hanging out the back end or the side end like this guy is. Okay, so we are all sewed in, 4 signatures. There's enough of a space here at the top and the bottom as well. So I feel like we're pretty good. You can see we're pretty spaced out evenly. And I've got some grungy lace going on with the spine, and that's kind of what I wanted. Yeah, I'm good with that. Maybe trim off some of these that are crooked. Not crooked, but bent. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted. Just to kind of have it there. It is what it is kind of thing. Whatever. So, there we have it. We have signatures sewn in. We're even here, and yeah. Again, we have a bit of a gap in the middle, but that's okay. We've got some fabric back there to hide the spine. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. So, that went a lot smoother than I expected it to. So, maybe it's because you guys are here. You brought me good luck. It normally doesn't go that smooth. So, anyways, I will finish this up. I got a few inside little touches, and then I'll be back at some point with a flip through of this. It'll probably be a pretty quick one. There's not a lot going on. There's a lot of journal space in this one. So, anyways, I'll talk to you soon.